Hello, hello. I hope you guys can hear me. Quick mic check before we begin. Hey, what's up, Jotham? All right, let's go to this. Hello. All right, hope the audio is good. Hope you can see me and we can we can start talking about anything you guys want. I got an animation that I'll give some feedback on from the Telegram group. And then generally, I'm just going to cover some story stuff. I figured we do a lot of demos and Blender and After Effects stuff. So I thought today we just take a step back and look at theory and talk about story stuff. So I have here The Anatomy of Story by John Truby. I have a story idea that has been stewing in my brain, so I'll just take you guys through the first few chapters of this book and give you an idea of the process he gives of how to write a good story. Um, I'm juggling a bunch of stories that I want to do as my first proper short film, so it's about time I just sat down and decided to write something down. I have like four, 5 ideas. I've not really settled on what it's going to be, but this might be one of them, or it might be something I shelf, or that might come back like I don't know a few years from now, when I'm old and have the connections to turn it into a film or something. So yeah, we'll check out my short film idea. It's called 48. And yeah, that's pretty much the agenda for today. So hopefully this is more productive than what you might find elsewhere or what's going on. I think there's a lot of Blender tutorials and demos and such things. So I'm just trying to find a nice stuff that's not there and stuff that's still applicable to the same people using Blender and such. So yeah, this should be fun. So I hope everyone can still hear me and see me. And if you can, this is also tabbed as an open QA. So feel free to write your questions in the comment section, and I'll always jump into them from there. Hey, what's up? Welcome. It's good to see you again, man. Your stuff. I'm seeing you also posting some work online. Looking good, looking good. On the socials, that is. So let me just quickly do this. Ooh, I need one screen for like just chilling. So let's go to the first thing, which was the animation feedback. So let me just start there first and get that out of the way so that I don't end up forgetting about it, or we just get too deep into the other stuff and yeah, I end up forgetting about it. So what is this? Good, no Bing. So yeah, if you guys have any questions from Bouncing Ball, story stuff, anything at all, really, just feel free to comment, or something you guys might want me to demo or show you. Bill, it's good that you're here. Yes, very good. We can get some back and forth as opposed to me just talking about it. So let me get it open and we'll get started. Okay. So let's go back to full screen or picture. All right. So I hope you guys can see this. This is Bill Munen's shot. He's been working on this animation for, is it a few weeks now? Maybe 2 weeks. I'm not sure. But it's pretty good. It's based on, maybe we should watch it before I hype it too much. So Bill said he's working on a body mechanics thing here. And the main thing was to make the shield look heavy, give him a nice entrance into the scene. It's based on this reference he posted from Dota 2 of a character called Maz. So I'm guessing it's just using the first few frames. Yeah, we'll just take a look at all the steps. So revised is the final. Okay, cool. And then there was this version. Oh, wait, no, this is something else. Okay. Trying to sneak something in now. Wait, this is this one we looked at before? Or you lost the feedback as well? Okay, so I'd given feedback on this before on some of the feeling of the shield. I guess my sketches were lost. But one of the main things we were talking about was that the shield felt too unstable. Ooh, you can't see me, can you? Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, so the feedback was that the shield felt like it was bouncing too much. And he was coming down and raising up into a new pose. So I felt like the shield bouncing was also kind of killing that idea of him raising up and coming up into this new position. So you can see here, he comes down, hits the ground, shield bounces. It's still in the air as he repositions, bounces again, still in the air. And then now he finally comes up. So I kind of felt like the shield should settle a bit faster. That was just the first thing that I noticed. The other thing was also the arm that was holding the spear was also kind of jumping around at the top. If you kind of pay attention to it, it does a big jump from this frame to this frame. When, you know, it's kind of covered, it's gone from off screen to here. It's just covered this space. And in the next frame, it's here. And then in the next frame, it barely moves, I think. Oops. Yeah, it's down here. So around here, there's just been a big jump. This big jump here is very noticeable because it starts slow and then suddenly it's down here. So my main feedback was just to slow it down so that now the spear can maybe still be up here, and then it progressively comes down as he slows down. And it eases down, because there's also some time where it's idle, like now it's just completely still. So if the spear came more like that, it might work a bit better. So I think that was like what stood out to me. I think he did a pretty decent job of cleaning up the shield and adding some more movement to the arm. It's nice. It's a bit more floaty now, which is not too bad. What I'd suggest now in this one, hang on, let's see how the shield. There was also another point about how he falls in, and this was actually the point I wanted to make here in the Q&A, was how he reacts when he comes to touch the ground. In like the bouncing ball that we talked about last time. Remember that as the ball comes closer towards the ground, the spacing between the frames becomes more and more. So this means that it's just essentially speeding up as it's coming closer towards the ground. But so as your character is falling and coming through into space, we also need to be able to see that that space, that difference in space between when he started up here and coming down here, we need to see some form of acceleration. And that's done by how you space the poses. So right now his feet are up here. Let's say it's a bouncing ball and it's in a stretching pose, so it's on its way down. It looks like that. And then on this pose here would be the ball stretched out like this, right? And then here would be the contact, the squash and stretch contact, which is when the object is at its most stretched and it's just touching the ground. If you check out, wait, I think I have it here. Yes! Animator Survival Kit. There is a page on squash and stretch. Where is it? I put it here, knowing I'd need it, but I thought I'd find the page like instantly. Whoa. Oh, this is nice. I might end up reading this. Okay, here on this page of Animator Survival Kit, if you have it, page 94, he shows that you need to show, where's my finger? He needs to show the contact pose when a ball is bouncing. You need to show that one frame when it's touching the object. The same when like you're doing a jump. Here you can see one frame of him with the foot touching the ground, and then immediately the next frame after that is squashed. I hope you can see that. If you can't, it's on the book page 95 of Animator Survival Kit, so check that out. Also, the frog he shows up here has the same thing. So right now what you have is the guy, this should be the stretched pose. This should be the moment his foot is touching the ground because he's at his most stretched out. And then the frame after that should be now starting to compress. So you kind of have your compression and your contact in the same frame. So you can see here that here is in the air, and then here he's contacting the ground, and at the same time his knees are starting to bend. So that kind of feels like he's slowing down. If you look at his core, it kind of feels like it's already slowing down before his feet have even touched the ground. So what you need to do is create that specific frame, as in just make it a pose of your own, where you have the character completely stretched out. Even his arms can be completely straight, and then his leg completely straight. Even this one, maybe this one can stay as it is. And then immediately the next frame, since you've shown that's where his foot is contacting, once you're on the next frame, you can even take him way lower, like even the head can be down like this, and the arms can still be up. You can take just his body down, and then now all the other stuff can now start to catch up as he catches himself, and as his body is coming down, and the arms and the other tools now kind of fall and catch up. And that's also another little note on the shield itself, is it kind of speeds up the same way. You fixed it here. But on the original version, it had that just one frame pop where it would just hit the ground. So it looks like you've really cleaned it up here, which looks pretty dope. But same thing. Look at the bottom of where the shield is. And that's where it touches the ground. So it looks kind of evenly spaced to me. Let's see. It's kind like the space between these two, the space between these two, and the space between these two. Remember the bouncing ball, as it gets closer to the ground, it starts to look, they start like this, and then they start to go farther and farther apart as it gets to the ground. So since it's coming from off screen and it's coming down really fast, we really need to show that this frame here where it hits the ground, the frame right before it has to be the biggest spacing between any of the other frames of the shield. If that makes sense, I really, really hope that makes sense because it's an important point. Um, so you'll notice the biggest jump we actually get from the shield is here at the top. There's a really big jump as it comes into the frame. So you can kind of get away with it just being like the whole thing just coming in. Just giving him some feedback on an animation. So if you have anything you want us to check out or have any question, just feel free to post it. But right now we're just reviewing this animation. So in case you've just checked in. So now, yeah, so the shield takes a big jump here, and then the next frame it takes that distance, and then as we keep going, it seems to be slowing down as it goes down. Now remember, you're also adding a bounce to it, so that means for it to be able to bounce, it means it must have had that momentum to be able to hit the ground and bounce back up. As you remember the story of parabolas crossing the ground. So once when your object is hitting the ground and bouncing, it means it shouldn't slow down. So try and make it seem like it hangs just a little bit. Like that means something like just go to this frame. This frame you can leave it where it is, but this one, try and get the shield, this point of the shield up here, and then here try to get this point of the shield up here, so that now when it hits this point you'll get this bigger gap here, and you kind of want to get these diminishing in size as they go upwards. But this big gap here is important. It's what's going to help it to stop looking like it's just slowing down just before it touches the ground. Yeah, but it's really smooth. It's really cool stuff, dude. Feedback doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with it. I think it's really dope. Even that little pause he has, that little jitter he has, is really nice. One last thing I'd add, just as a little layer on top, I think the shield and the movement I was saying should help a lot with the look of it. One last touch is contrapasta. Look at what your shoulders are doing and what the hips are doing. They should always be the opposite. And the hips should also sway when your guy is shifting weight. So here, here his hips are this way. Oops. Oh man, now it's gonna get so messy. Here his hips are this way. So when he shifts like this, they should at least change in some way. Like here they should be this way, and then as he goes up, they shift this way. The side that's holding the leg, the side that's holding the weight, the other side is the opposite. Bill Munene did the animation. Yeah, so when he's down here, the hips should be that way, and then as he shifts his weight to the other side, the hips can also go this way, so that they're also contra to this. So down here they should be like this, and then shoulders will be this way, so that they oppose each other. And then there they oppose each other, and then here you already have some of that going on, and that should work. So yeah, that, I guess that should be enough for you to do for now. The same thing I did with the shield of just tracking how it comes down. Try to do the same thing with the spear. You can also track this tip and try and make it do some nice turn as it comes down like this, as he lifts it up, so that it's not just lagging. There's a time it lags over here, so you can try and make it do, he comes down and then it goes like this to the position it's at now. Anyway, yeah, cool. Hope that's good enough. Cool thing with Sync Sketch, it's just gonna save all that, and you should be able to continue from there. Whoops, wrong one. That one. Yes. So thanks for submitting the clip. Hope that was good feedback. Yeah, it's really good. It's really dope. It's like just those tiny. When the feedback is those tiny details, it means yeah, you've done a really good job. Um, okay, so let's do story stuff. I'm gonna show you guys some of the ideas I toss around and some of the things I've come across while building stories and writing scripts for ads and these event stuff. So let's try combine all that knowledge and try to find a way to write an interesting story called 48. And I'd like you guys to give me feedback in the chat about what you think about. Wait, what do you think if I just said it's just called 48? And the way I've even pronounced it, NATO 48. What do you think? Oh, wait. Okay, it could be anything if I just told you 48. It could be a number, it could be 48 hours. It could be 48, the stage number of a job, but actually 48 is the number plate of a Boda guy. And the story is I should let me open the doc first, because that's where it needs to start from. Bill, if you have any questions actually concerning the feedback I gave, or maybe something I got wrong, just feel free to holler again. But for now, I'll just show this. Ooh, transitions. 48, yeah. So my story is basically called 48, and let me pitch it to you guys. Where's camera only? So my story is called 48, and it's about the how it's about the differences between cultures, especially in Nairobi. And I mean in terms of how the guy who drives the Jav, the guy who drives a matatu, and the passengers he takes around are very different people, and they cannot relate. They could in some cases, but in like central Nairobi and CBD, a lot of the time you'll have like some people don't even know where these people live, what they eat. I don't, for the most part. I mean, I do know, but like if you ask me, this one guy, there's a whole life these guys live, and even Nairobians themselves, there's a whole life we live, and I feel like if we could bring a clash between those two circles, you could get an interesting story, much like we have with Parasite, it's actually, Parasite is kind of like a catalyst of this idea of two cultures crossing each other, two classes crossing each other. So, story of 48, it's about these guys who he used to be a bank robber, and when his old friend suddenly shows up one day to do one last job, he finds himself in the middle. He's a Boda guy. He finds himself in the middle of Nairobi doing things he never thought he'd have to do for the sake of this heist. It's a heist sort of story, but also a lot of double crossing. I want to do some double crossing there between this guy and this old friend of his who suddenly shows up. But that's the story. So this guy's bike is like KMCF 485C or something, but 48 is part of the number plate, and people just call him that, by that 48. So 48 Niaje, blah 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 blah. And just by that time when I was saying 48 is the number on his bike, and by saying 48 I might mean 48 hours. Hey, I should probably base my story as it all happens in 48 hours. That would be pretty cool. Or maybe change it to 24 and then make the guy's bike. No, then it would be too obvious. It would be too obvious if 24 the show. Okay, anyway, so that's kind of what happens. You're just kind of letting things float and stew and happen. But one of the things John Truby talks about is you're not really thinking of things as one big story. You just have ideas are not really ideas of a full film. If you get an idea and say, imagine if there was a heist for this is what happened. Imagine a story about a heist, and it's like Boda guys. When the cops are chasing the Boda guy through, they see the guy Panda Boda and like they're making the escape. But as he does that, they get into Tao, and then there's just Bodas everywhere. And now the cops can't track whoever this guy was. So that was the story, that was my idea, and I was like, that would be pretty cool to see something like this in a movie based inside Nairobi, right? And I'm sure you guys have kind of seen how bodas stop at a red light, like many of them. And then as soon as it just changes, they'll just suddenly just go. So I really also like that moment. I feel like it would be cool if there's like someone there trying to stop them, and then he doesn't really know which one the guy who just jacked from them is. And then they all just zoom past him, and then, they all ride off into the sunset, and our guys get away. So that was the idea. And one of the first things this guy says in the book is that when you get an idea for a story like that, you're really just getting an idea for one scene. If a story, as we've done in the scene deconstructions, a story is like, a movie is like 90, something like Zootopia was 60, 65 scenes. Something like Wolf Walkers, I think, is 70. It actually had a lot of scenes. Um, so the idea you have is just giving you one scene or two or three. Okay, it's the guys getting onto the Boda Boda. There's definitely gonna be a scene of the robbery, but I'm gonna have to figure out what that is. Um, there's this guy who's coming to stop them. Okay, that's just one scene, but who's this guy? How do I set up this guy? How can I set up the situation so that this guy standing here is also really dramatic? Just by coming up with the idea, I haven't come up with any of that. Maybe my brain has filled in some of it just to make the idea sound better, but me, myself, as the person who's putting this down on paper, that appeal and that story is not there. So that's something you'll have to figure out. And that's what I mean by you only get one scene. So we've only figured out there's one scene of the guys with Boda Bodas driving off. So John Truby's idea is now, from here, let's build out. Let's now try and figure out the most dramatic way, or let's try and build contrast. Oops, makes upside down. Let's try and build contrast between the situation that started and the situation that led up to it. So contrast is what makes things interesting. Like the guy was jumping, the guy with the shield and the spear, he jumped in, he started stretched, he came in, he was squashed, and then he stood up. Like all that contrast between the different poses is what makes it interesting. So think of a scene like, okay, now let me get out to you guys. Give me a story that had a nice plot twist at the end. Just think of something like something happened at the end and the plot twist was really dope for you. So yeah, go ahead in the chat and tell me what's up. While you guys give your list of stuff, I'm going to say, and I'll actually pause and wait to read your suggestions once I'm done with mine. But for me, it was The Illusionist. At the end of The Illusionist, it's a movie with Edward Norton. And at the end of it, there's Paul Giamatti is standing at the end of at a train station, and he's looking at a letter that was sent to him by Edward Norton, whose character is now on the train, escaping. And now he's just putting everything together, that the whole movie, everything that's been going on has just been a show, and he's just been a character in that guy's show. And he's just like, blah, and even me, I'm just like, blah. And everyone in the audience is like, what? And that was a cool plot twist, right? So the Bible, wow. Come on, man, give me something to work with. No, not all Marvel movies. Give me something. No, not just everything. Give me that one story, that one film. We're working on story here, so I need something specific. No blockbusters, nothing controversial. Tell me that one. Inception is an example. Tenet might be for those who figured out what was going on. Prestige is fantastic. A fantastic example. So I'll go with what you've just mentioned, The Prestige. If you think about the plot twist ending of The Prestige, it was that, spoiler alert if you have not seen it, I'm about to spoil what happens at the end. We discover that one character was actually had a twin, and he was using that twin to do a lot of his magic. That was what's that one character's name? What's that one actor's name? There was Christian Bale. It was Christian Bale. It was Christian Bale. Oh, it was Christian Bale. Christian Bale and Wolverine. What's his name? Anyway, Wolverine's character went to Tesla and started cloning himself just to be able to do this trick. So the plot twist at the end was that the guy who fell into the tank and died uh was actually a copy of Hugh Jackman's character, who kept on dying over and over again just for the sake of the prestige. And this was a crazy plot twist. What made it a crazy plot twist was the setup, the contrast. They set us up to understand just how crazy these two guys were about going about their magic, the things they were willing to do to do their illusions and their magic tricks. But there's also the conflict they had with each other because of the chick who died while they were doing a show. So this was all like murder. Murder was tying them together. So at the end of the story, you find that it's murder that leads to the plot twist. So kind of just building up all these contrasts. Now you start saying, "Oh my God, it's the same as this. Oh, that's why they were showing me this." That moment you have is when you start to notice that contrast and difference, and the build up, and everything's just been built up and built up, and everything's just coming together to make that final moment dope. So back to my story again, or even Shutter Island was the same thing. It turns out that the whole thing was just this guy was just crazy. And actually, the plot twist was that he actually just accepted that he was crazy and he went with the lobotomy, um, which was pretty sad. And if you rewatch the movie, you can kind of tell everyone was in on the joke, everyone except the audience. So the plot twist was that despite appearances, there's still a lot of shit going on. And let's see what was the contrast that was happening. He managed to figure out that something wrong was going on, but he could never really figure out what that wrong thing was. Much like himself, he knew there was something wrong with him from seeing his kids die and all that stuff, but he himself just couldn't get over it and would rather live this delusion that he was an investigator. So in order to build that contrast that this guy has finally given up on life, he's just going to let them lobotomize him before he can finally accept the truth, is that they had to do all this stuff just to get him to accept this. They had to get everyone to play along. And even as everyone was playing along, no one was really doing their part all the way, but they were still fooling him. Like all that stuff just built up to that final moment of this guy's actually nuts. So back to my story again. We have the guy coming to try and stop a bunch of Bodas driving off, and so we need to build that contrast. We need to make a situation such that for that guy standing in front of them trying to stop them, this needs to be a contrast for him, for his character, where he started to end up here standing in front of those jars like that. It also needs to look really bad on him, or really desperate, or something, or based on what we're trying to think about. The other thing is the Buddhas themselves. We need to find some way that all these Buddhas being there at that specific moment also ties into that guy learning something, and also our character. Remember, there was the two guys, they were working together on a heist, and this scene is just how they escape the heist. It has nothing to do with even the guy stopping them. It could be a bodyguard, it could be the guy they robbed, it could be a cop who's been chasing them all this time, it could be anything. But right now we're just trying to build that contrast. We're trying to compile ideas that we've had and things we've thought about, and try to find what makes the story good, what makes that moment fire. And that'll be okay. We need to show the desperation of this guy who's come to try and stop the heist, to the point where he thinks he can stop a bunch of Buddhas with his bare hands. So that also brings up something about Buddhas themselves. They are very mobile. And our characters now come in to blend into the crowd. So he's literally blending into a crowd of Bodas to escape. So we need to kind of find a way to tie that into our story as we're going backwards. How can we even start the story in a way that our guy is just in a bunch of Bodas, and then he's the one who drives? He's let's say the first scene of the movie can be a bunch of Bodas at a stoplight, and then our one character is the one who drives off, and you can see for sure this is the guy who's going to tell the story, and then like the camera follows him and everything. But that imagery of him driving off from a crowd of Bodas now can be tied back when now we show this final scene of the group of Bodas together with him, and he's blending between them. We're now doing that contrast. When the light now turns green, instead of just him driving forward and like driving through that guy or whatever, it's all the Buddhas are just going to go together and just to confuse this guy. So just by explaining just that, we've already kind of seen where we can take this story. We've already kind of seen from that beginning scene to that ending scene, we've shown that our character has changed in some way. He's fighting his urge to drive into this guy and or just go ahead of the crowd. He's now being forced to just sit there and wait as the crowd now is, as that crowd of bikes, they all need to move together. He can't move by himself. So that's already a kind of story device we can use. We can say that our guy started out as this guy who's just so bent on standing out and being himself that he didn't realize that was coming to mess him up. And now at the end of the story, he's come to realize that by blending in with the crowd, by just being accepting who he is and being normal, he can hide among a bunch of Buddhas and drive off with them into the sunset at the end of his heist. So cool. We've kind of figured out story structure, and we've only maybe added 2, 3, 4 more scenes of establishing his story at the beginning and showing him driving off. So we only have 2 scenes so far, but we've managed to also build a bunch of characters and figure out where the story can go. So that's basically just brainstorming, and that's now just sitting down and thinking about this kind of thing. Hope you guys are keeping up and this stuff is making sense. You can still hear me. My mic was upside down for some time, so that kind of sucks. So I hope it didn't mess up the audio too much. So let me share full screen, picture small. And here is basically a document I've created. This book has a bunch of exercises at the end of every chapter explaining some stuff you need to do in order to build up the story and the idea you have. So, yes. So, Inception was also a good point. Someone's mentioned Inception in the chat. Inception was cool because the plot twist at the end of the story was that Cobb gets to go back to... No, the plot twist was that in order to break down the father's company, they just had to make the son accept... getting to a lot of stuff he had to come to accept. In order for them to get the goal of the characters was to get the son to shut down his dad's company so that this other Japanese guy could take over. And they did this by reminding the son that his dad still loved him, by tricking him into thinking that the dad still loved him even if he didn't. And they did this by this whole elaborate thing of getting him into that place, and then when he finally confronts his dad and opens the safe and finds the pinwheel and discovers, whoa, my dad actually loved me for who I am. Once he comes out of the dream, he'll just decide, okay, maybe my dad loved me for who I am, and if who I am is shutting down this company, then that's what I'm gonna do. So that was their plan. And Cobb's idea, or the plot twist for Cobb, was the thing for spinning the thing on the desk. And a lot of people missed that. It's not really a plot twist. That was just new equilibrium. He was just showing you that things have changed, that Cobb himself has changed a lot. And people, I think a lot of, even Christopher Nolan himself said, the story is conclusive. If you watch the film, whenever he spins that thing, no one can talk to him. He'll hold a gun like this, and if anyone tries to talk to him, he won't even turn and look away or anything. Even when basically as the story goes along, that's what he does. But at the end of the story, you find that he spins it, and as soon as he hears the kid's voice, he just turns and goes to them. Like he doesn't even care if it's a dream or reality anymore. He's just resigned himself to his fate, and he's given up. And that was pretty crazy plot twist. And how did we build that contrast? The same way. Let's go back. The same way we're showing this guy, he's spinning that thing. Every time he spun it before this moment, he's always been really crazy. He even used to pull the hammer on the gun, and he's like on standby, ready to shoot himself or shoot someone or whatever he needs to, once he figures out it's a dream. So yeah, that contrast of how he's changed was just made for a really good plot twist at the end. So Inception, Good film. Watch it again with that in mind, and you'll see just how crazy Cobb was. So okay, so I was actually full screen, and that I like that movie so much. I just killed my thing. So back here, let's talk about premise. So the first thing you need to do is to figure out a premise. It's one short sentence that explains the whole story and what you think the whole story is going to be about. So while I was still brainstorming and thinking about all the things that I'd like to go into it, so let me explain it. When an old friend, when a gangsters, when a cheap robber's friend shows up for one last heist, he is forced to do something. So we need to give him an action. We've said he's a Boda guy who starts out just wanting to stand out from the crowd, right? Just based on that scene. And by the way, I don't have to fix myself on this scene. I'm supposed to be free to just edit all this. I can even completely ditch that ending I was thinking about, because at the end of the day, what I wanted to show was that contrast between a high class person and just a kawaida Boda guy, and how the experiences can be different but also somewhat the same. So and at the same time we're doing this story within a heist story. There was one time I was in a matatu and I saw these Mkokoteni guys, and there was one story actually thought up where someone would use them like a crime syndicate or something would use these Mkokoteni guys to ship in bombs and such. So while the cops are there searching underneath cars and doing all this stuff, they just have a Mkokoteni guy just show up. Everyone's like, oh man, this thing stinks. And then, when D-Day comes, the thing just blows up. I was like, that would be pretty fucking nuts. Probably from my Westgate PTSD, but I don't know. Then there was another story, which would be that the Boda Boda guy, as the Boda Boda guys themselves, are escaping, they it's just how the main character escapes. It's not how they escape with the money. So for the ultimate story, I wanted them to put the money on these Mkokotenis and use the Mkokotenis to escape, because they can hide in plain sight. Sure, they'd stink and all that, but if they could put oops, sorry, I've zoomed for a sec. If they could put the cash on the Mkokotenis go and hide in the crowd, and then they get on the bikes and then they escape. But then now, I don't know, somehow one of our characters is smart enough to know that he tracked the bike or something. So that's kind of something already now I know I need to figure out. But I wanted that story piece to be in there. So what we have in the second step beside premise is a wish list, where you just go down and write all the stuff or all the different ideas that you kind of want this story to have, and in the process you can kind of figure out what your premise should be. So let me try increase this size. So let's say scene with Boda's driving off, and bad guy is unable to find good guy in the crowd as he escapes. And I also have to have a scene of Mkokotenis carrying the money away. I don't know if you guys remember The Italian Job. Seth Green was in it. It's a really cool movie. In The Italian Job, they had those mini coupes, and they were driving the minis through the sewers of France, which was really cool. And yeah, they took advantage of that car being a European car, and that France also had some really nice sewers. So combine the two ideas together and you get yourself something cool. So in the ideas of Mkokotenis, is there maybe some cultural way that something that's common that we could also tie into how they escape with the money? Would also be pretty cool. Like, we could even say they stashed the money away in okay, not an M-Pesa shop, because that's controversial as hell. Yeah, so we can't say they stashed the money away there. So maybe Kokoteni's. I'll just write it down as Kokoteni's carrying the money away. But at the back of my head, I need to think of how I can make this more interesting. Oh, there was another one was the garbage truck guys. I don't know. A lot of the thing for me was also the smell thing. I think the smell thing was a deterrent. Was gonna be part of the story of how these guys are getting away with all this stuff. We're gonna have the guy driving them Kokoteni is actually this guy who used to be a robber a long time ago. He became a garbage guy. So this one guy who's come back and is bringing everyone together also brought this guy in and told him, we're gonna need you for this. So this dude who's brought in all these other guys is supposed to be doing this heist. He's the one who's doing this heist, and he's going to attempt to double cross everyone at the end, but he's not going to succeed. So when a cheap rover's friend shows up for one last heist, he decides to join in. He crosses the threshold. He joins in and is forced to cross into a new class or a new zone in order to get rich. So that's what I'm just going to say. He's gonna be forced to. I also want to, by saying we're forcing him into a new culture, we now have to start thinking about what cultures are we talking about? Where is this money coming from? The place they rob, can we use that place in a way that would not only help show the difference in their classes, but also help us with that last scene we were talking about of the Bodas driving away? Can the place we choose for them to do their robbery, can it also add impact into that final scene? They stash the money. What do you mean they stash the money? Which point? Oh, there's actually some questions. Quite the cinephile, getting a lot of his synopsis to movies I've not watched before. Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can watch, bro. I'll recommend here. I'll watch it again. Inception is actually really good. Yeah, watch it again, knowing what I'm talking about for spinning the top. Okay. So they stashed the money, and I'm still on this point. What do you mean by that? You're still on that point. So yeah, we need to think of how even where this story happens needs to be able to add to this impact. Either the impact of that scene of the bikes driving away, or the impact of the character deciding to hide. Like we can say that you can have that wholesome moment where you're like, wow, considering where this character has come from, to think that he still hid in that crowd must mean anyway he's changed. We need the person watching to be able to say that. Just as we've said with Shutter Island and with the Prestige and such things. Like, you guys, things have gotten this crazy, or this story, just the events of this story have caused this character to change in this way, and now we can see it for ourselves. So I'm just gonna write scene with guys driving off. There's Mkokoteni is carrying the money away. I also wanted to have this sort of double cross thing. Have you guys seen Hustle, the TV show from the UK? It was really cool. Let's see, YouTube Hustle. There was American Hustle, and then there was Hustle, and yes, this one. Wow, I just opened the season finale. Spoilers. But this was the show, and it was really dope. It was really awesome. I freaking loved it, and the plot was very. Ooh, a smoky guy. That would be dope. Ooh, a smoky guy. Ah, you got me. That can be a nice twist for a double cross. Oh my god. Okay, I'll show you. Yeah, in this show there was some really nice twists, and you'd find at the end of the story you find this black dude. The black dude's character is the black dude's character is what's this? Oh man, why did you tell? Dude, you're throwing me off. Any this guy's character, it turns out he thought of everything, he was ahead of everything. Remember that one guy you saw in that scene? He was in the background. Yeah, it turns out he was part of the plan all along. Yeah, that's a lot of the thing that happens in Hustle. So that's also kind of something I wanted to include. And I think even with your smoky guy, that's an interesting story. We can have that my main character, the good guy, has like a pocket smoky guy. So imagine if we're there seeing that scene of the Bodas, the guy is standing there trying to stop the Bodas. None of them are passing, and as they all zoom by, it turns out our guy was not even on there. He was not even one of the Bodas. He was actually uh, on the side in a smoky van thing. Okay, no, that kind of ruins the moment because if he's no longer on the bike anymore, if he was on the side with like a smoky cat or something, like undercover pretending he's hiding, that would be an interesting twist, but it kind of kills all the work we've done so far. We've said that moment from the first scene of him driving off from the group of Bodas, and us tying it back to him being part of that crowd. I think that would be, we shouldn't lose that contrast. Um, yeah, it probably could carry cash. That would be really cool. If we could now we need to find a way to tie Mkokoteni is carrying the money away and a smoky guy. Like the cash is gonna be stashed away in a smoky van at some point. But also we shouldn't just add that for the sake of adding it. We're also thinking of the story and we're thinking of how it ties into the same thing we were saying of that contrast between our guy driving off from one group and our guy driving off with a group at the end. If adding the smoky cat can tie into that story, then let's do that. If it does a better job of illustrating that point than even the Mkokotenis, then I'm even willing to change it to that. So I'll just add down here. We can do insert below and then insert two below. I can add smoky van. What's that thing called even? A truck? Cart? Smoky cart used to transport. You know what? Let's not even say the money. Let's just say to transport something. Because we may as well say that I think at some point when my Kagenius guy is coming up with this plot of how they're going to steal, I'm going to need some ideas of how he's going about it. How are they breaking the locks? How are they digging holes? So I think even this smoky cart can be useful as a transportation device as opposed to just thinking of it as how it will carry the money. In fact, we can even say the same thing. Kokoteni is carrying the money specifically. I wanted that because no one would ever suspect Kokoteni is full of cash. Like you just see one that's just big, but then it turns out that big pile on top of it is actually cash. That's something I really want. So that's definitely staying as carrying the money. So let's just say carrying the money away, or it's gonna be used at some point. So when a cheap robber's friend shows up for one last heist, he's forced to cross into a new class in order to get rich. Remember, that's what the story is. When someone picks up the Netflix remote and it's showing 48 there, that's the paragraph that's going to be written down there. So notice I've not even talked about the Bodas. I've not talked about the plot twist. I'm just saying this is the general story of what's going to happen. So this list here is going to continue growing. I'm just going to keep adding stuff, removing stuff as things go by. There's also now a section for possibilities where we can talk about just by the premise we've set up, not only the ideas we have, but also they could do a switcheroo, just for the concept of just to try and think beyond what we have so far. Let's ask the question, what if? Let's add what if on top of all our wish list and the premise. So possibilities. What if let's look at the rich guy, the guy who's coming to stop the Bodas and he's standing in front of them with his arms out. What's the most powerful way we could make this guy look? What if he was an actual rich person? Like, let's drop him down. I've said that I really like the idea of Mkokoteni carrying the cash away and it being a dirty thing. So let's take that idea of dirt and guys being avoidant of dirt. I think that's generally what I'm trying to say with my story, that people don't like to be dirty. Nairobians don't like to be dirty, and maybe these Boda guys don't mind being a little bit dirty. Like that's basically what I'm saying based on the sentences I've written down. So remember back in stories I was saying, as long as you write something down, some kind of argument is gonna come out of it. So let's try and take that argument and build on top of it. So clearly I'm just a clean freak of some kind. So I'm saying people should my character, the rich guy who's standing there, this should be his worst, him at his worst. Remember that Netflix show of the stars thing? Like how the chick got down all the way to the point where she was dirty, her hair was all over the place, she has 1 star. She showed up at the wedding and she's like, I don't give a fuck about you guys. That's the kind of thing I want my character to have. I want that guy standing there to be at his utter worst. So let's say bad guy at the end trying to stop the bodas should be messy, dirty, and otherwise would not have been in public. So maybe in the process of chasing this guy, he's fallen over, he's crashed his car, he's torn his shirt, but he's still chasing this guy. He's still trying to find our Boda guy. People avoid being dirty, plus the person pushing them kokoteni is being loud and uses gestures to make people move away. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, don't you think it would be so cool if someone actually robbed and got away with a shit ton of money? And it was kokoteni doing this. Like, even people, like, it would be even funny if people are, like, even trying to touch it and then they're like, oh, don't touch it, no. But they're like, bro, if you knew that was money, you'd be jumping inside there. And that also ties into something I've realized here, money. So, in fact, it's just that if you knew that was money, you'd jump into that gokoteni full of trash just to get it. So, even this character of ours who's now in public, he's dirty and all this stuff, and his clothes are rough and everything. We should show that even in his pursuit to chase our good guy, to chase our story, he's willing to dirtify himself and be seen in public, messed up like this, just for the sake of chasing money. Because, I mean, it's a heist. This guy is chasing him, he's trying to stop him so that he can get his money back. So we need to show that money, and I can already start to show in my story that this attachment between dirt and money is a nice device that I can play around with. I can use it as setups, I can use it as plot twists, I can think about it as I'm tying into different things. But just by thinking about it, by looking at possibilities, by looking at my wish list, by looking at my premise, I'm starting to quickly get more ideas and see exactly where this story can go, and also learning stuff about myself. So we'll say that this guy loves money so much that he will chase it and embarrass himself just to catch even the robber. Even at least the robber. So what kind of person are we thinking about? I don't know. What kind of person do I know that would actually chase someone who's just robbed them, just for the sake of getting them? It would be maybe it's a new phone. If people found out I just bought an iPhone for 100 G's and I lost it, that would be super embarrassing. But I don't think that's a big enough deal for me to go and stand in the middle of a junction and try and stop the guy who stole it. But I can at least say an attachment to something material might be able to push someone to do that. So it might not be money, it might not be an iPhone, but maybe it's a ring, like the mom's ring. It might be the dad's watch. It might be a title deed even, which would be pretty interesting. I think title deeds are something that would be a bit more relevant than a gold watch or a silver ring, for the general audience, because this is a Kenyan story after all. So let's say that this guy has a valuable title deed or object that's stolen, and he's willing to chase for it. So now let's work backwards. Remember, we also have our good guy and we have his friend, the friend who comes up with all the good ideas, and he's the guy who's doing all this heist. So we can use this story as a setup. We can say we can add a scene like a good guy's friend, the plot twist, we can say, was that he actually wanted the title deed, wanted to get the title deed, but he knew the only way was to organize an elaborate heist. Elaborate heist. So he went to call on an old friend, which is now good guy. And also notice I'm not actually giving anyone names. I'm not calling them Maura, James, Michael, or anything, because I want them to be expendable. I want to be able to just say, okay, maybe good guy's friend is not actually a cool character. Maybe I don't need him anymore. I can just remove him. When it's now JMO, it becomes, man, but JMO is such a cool character. I don't delete him. It's a bit easier, at least for me, to just chop a character like that. But if you think it's necessary, you can do it for yourself. List to Storm Lord. Oh, when they were getting into his castle. I actually don't remember that movie that well. Time for a rewatch. Yeah, so we've thought of we've said his only way was to organize this heist. So yeah, we've started. We need to remember we have this moment where good guy is gonna ride off with a Boda, and we also need to give redemption for this character. Now that we've set up that that's what he's doing, we need to set up that this moment of the Bodas driving off is also a moment for this guy who was stealing the title deal after all. This is actually the moment where he gets his redemption somehow, and for him, that's how now he gets his happy ending. So how could we possibly make a bunch of Bodas driving off tie into a title deed or something? I think it would be cool if, let's say, our main guy would be the guy on the Boda, the good guy. Then we have his friend on his back, who's riding as a passenger, and he has the deed in his hand. And as they're in that crowd, we can see that the two of them now kind of have that exchange for, yo, man, you shouldn't have done all that. This heist meant all of it. And then now this guy kind of confesses, sorry, all this was just an elaborate plan for me to get this, blah, blah, blah. So please, get me out of this situation, and we'll be able to escape. So look, I'm already writing dialogue. And then the other character will be like, you know what? For us to get away from this, the only way for us to get out of this situation is if we blend in with the crowd, which is now to blend in with the Bodas. So we also need to kind of think of how we can make him saying that really powerful. Like, even the guy at the back should be like, yo, dude, and yeah, thanks. Even after I've double-crossed you and all this, you're even going to still help me escape, and you're still going to try and blend into a crowd after all the stuff you've been telling me before the heist and all this. And yeah, you've changed. We need to show that contrast. So I need to be thinking about that at the back of my head. Like, that's a possibility. So that they're just gonna zoom past this guy who is... Oh, remember our story was also that we have Nairobian guys can't really understand the stuff that's happening under their nose. We have Kokotinis carrying money. So even as the bike zooms past this guy, it's coming out. So even as they zoom past this guy, when he's there trying to stop the Bodas, they should actually pass him. And you know what? He should touch one of them, right? Like, he should actually touch them, but like he's so out of it or something, but that he doesn't even realize they've passed and they've touched him. And as they leave him there, like, oh my god, no, trying to stop other bikes, and those guys are riding off. It kind of builds to the drama of them driving off to the sunset. So now, if we can think of this moment building up also to these three moments, we can go back up to the wish list. Oops, where is this? I can go back up to the wish list. Oh, that's my screen recording. Yes. I can go back up to my wish list and type how I want to show the contrast. I want to show the good guy carrying his friend on his back. They have an exchange before they meet bad guy at the junction. So we can also say another thing I want to add on this. How did bad guy get to that junction? We can say he knew those guys would be there, but he wouldn't know which one they are. So at the back of my head, I need to remember that as well. Show the good guy carrying his friend on his back. They have an exchange before they meet the bad guy at the junction. So all that, remember that whole dialogue I've talked about and all that stuff? I've now just reduced it into this cell. I've just said, show the guy carrying him on his back. They have an exchange before they, like, that's it. If I don't need this scene anymore, I can delete it. It's not 4 pages of dialogue that I sat writing for a long time. You know, that also adds that value of like, I don't want to delete this. No. If it's not working for the story, if it's just one cell in an Excel sheet, it becomes a lot easier to just delete it. So yeah, we just keep going. Other possibilities we can think of, we need to think of the story contrast. We're thinking of where he's stealing the money. I'd like to think of something ironic of like they steal the money from a place where Bodas would never even be allowed. Like from a neighborhood where bodas are not allowed. That would be really interesting. Because now our guy, he's a Boda guy, he's a cheap robber. And okay, he's not necessarily a Boda guy, but if he's a Boda guy and he's told, okay, now it's heist time, but you're not the Boda guy. You need to go in to Runda, into this guy's fancy ass house with dogs and stuff. You need to go into his living room looking all cool and stuff and make sure no one knows it's you. And you need to copy a file from his comp or something. So, I mean, that sounds like some comedy right there. Like, how our guy would be able to get into the house, seeing him on a comp. He doesn't know how to run a comp. He doesn't know what a USB port is. And we have this awkward moment, like he's on call with his boy. No, he shouldn't be on call with his boy. I mean, they're simple guys, so they shouldn't have access to technology or anything. That would kind of kill the story, right? So he's been given the plan. He's been told, okay, you need to go in, make sure you plug this into the USB port, and then you press this button. And he's going to go in and he's going to struggle using the comp. Maybe someone will walk in, some chick will walk in or something. He has an awkward conversation with her, which just continues to demonstrate how out of place he is. But somehow he manages to get out of that situation. He gets the flash disk, puts it in his pocket, and then he's driving off with his bike. So that would be a nice sort of self-contained scene. And we can think of that like, if you remember the story circle, we can think of that as that moment when now that he's brought himself, now that he's accepted to do the heist, now that he's brought himself into this new world of doing the heist, of doing all this stuff, this can be that one situation where he gets a wake-up call like, yo, maybe I should have just stayed as a kawaida guy. Maybe I shouldn't have listened to this guy when he was telling me, let's go rob this. Like, this is getting out of hand. This is by no means what I was doing. And once again, that him having that realization is also now slowly building up towards him realizing that when that moment of bodas comes, he should not drive off. He should stay with the crowd and move with the crowd. So as we think about how he's going to get into the house, maybe he gets into the house with a bunch of caterers. He doesn't even know caterers exist, but he gets into the house with them. Even he can walk past this guy that he brushes at the end of the story. He can actually literally do it. And those smart guys in the audience can figure out, wait, this is like that scene for bodas, but now they're caterers and it's the same guy. He's even holding his hands out the same way and he even touches the guy, but he never even realizes that it's him. Like, that would be a really nice setup for the plot twist at the end, right? I think it would be. So, let's say he does this. In fact, let's do that. So, good guy sneaks into bad guy's house by blending into the caterers. We can say that, like, this guy is so ignorant that at the end, not only can't he tell the difference between bodas, but even these caterers and stuff, he can't tell the difference between them. And that's why it becomes so easy for good guy to be able to go in. And keep in mind, we've already thought of the plot twist of the title deed, so that's also added another twist for us. Even before I finish typing this, I can say good guy's friend can't go because bad guy would definitely identify him. So friend is sending good guy. Ooh, they're getting names. I need to stop giving them names. Good guy. Okay. So once he's going in, he blends in with the characters and literally does and mirrors the same scene at the end of the story. When the guy... this we can even make it like this is the moment where our character realizes by standing out I might be able to be seen. So like even here, maybe good guy should have that moment, be like, and yeah, this guy can't even realize I've just swapped out with someone else. Like that would be some nice dialogue moments to have. So we can just leave it in as that for now. And then also we'll need to show as a wish list. Here we'll say a scene showing bad guys' ignorance. So that would be like as that guy is plugging, oh man, these scenes are coming together. So that scene where we see our guy plugging in the flash disk and he's struggling to figure out which button goes where. He can probably this can probably be where we introduce, say, a love interest. So as he's there trying to copy, now the chick I was saying walks in, could be someone who our bad guy has just had a moment with. So our guy has walked in, he snuck into the house, he's got in, and we need to now show bad guy's ignorance. So while he's inside, we can have a moment of him like talking to one of the houses, like, hey, yo, why don't you understanding, man? They keep telling you, motherfuckers, like, put the flowers in the vase, make sure it has 2 spoons of sugar. For how many times do I have to tell you this? That, and then the chick is like, yo man, I've only been here like for like 2 days, and he's like, no, I don't give a fuck, like you need to pay attention. We need to show how he's also a bit messed up. Like we're simultaneously showing our bad guy is a bad guy, but also at the same time we're building up that contrast as well. So by showing his ignorance, now we can also combine 2 scenes together and now make this chick storm out on him. Like once he's like, fix it right now, and then he storms out, that chick can now go to him, and then that's now where they have that exchange, and maybe he meets the chick and she now starts to help him get into his inner circles. That's kind of adding an additional character, which is not a good thing. So for now, I'm just gonna say we're gonna have a scene where we show the bad guy's ignorance, and I'll just keep in mind that there's a possibility that we can add that chick in later, because even now I'm still not thinking that him breaking into the guy's house might not be a good idea. So I'm also trying not to connect ideas in a way that if I delete the house, I'll have to delete the chick, I'll have to delete all this stuff. I just want, if I delete the house, I can still think of a way to bring in a love interest. I can still think of a way to show his ignorance. Those ideas are still floating in the air. So I've watched Nonini's mini series on YouTube called Code 24. It's got a neat freak OCD prone detective who's an intellectual. Oh, really? Is it a dope story? I wouldn't mind watching that if it's a dope story. Code 254. Okay, I'll check it out. So that's basically it. Down here now is where we need to establish story challenges and problems. The issue I have right now is how to establish the friendship between the two guys. How to connect the title deed. In fact, my whole problem is to be how the heist is going to work. Just in general, how exactly are they? What's the plan? How are they going to steal stuff? How are they going to fool people? Just in general, what are they stealing? I still need to figure that out. And remember, all that also has to tie into the story. It's not just they're stealing money. It's not just if they are stealing money, that stealing of the money has to tie back to that scene of bodas driving off. So my designing principle, I think, ultimately what I've come to realize is distinction between classes, smells, and money. Like if you were going to say what's the story really about, that's what it's about. And now as we move as we build all these scenes, we need to tie in this thing of smells and money and classes. So even like that scene I was saying of where the lady would argue with the bad guy, I should also be thinking of that very argument they have should also tie into classes, smell, and money. So he should be like, no, can't you guys tell the difference between flowers that are rotting and nini? Kwanza you guys think, so you don't even know the difference. How much am I paying you guys? He needs to show how all the stuff he says, all the stuff he does is now continuously showing this design principle. When we're thinking about what we're writing for his dialogue, design principle is what we're thinking about. And if you're thinking, yo, bro, that was messed up. How did you just say that? Yes! That's how bad that guy is. I'm just writing dialogue here. It's not me, I swear. So there's still more stuff going on. You still need to think of who the best character to tell this story is and why they're the best character. We've said it's going to be the good guy riding the border because we are showing how he accepts he is one of the Buddha guys and a normal guy. So I think that's ultimately the story. So we're going to use this idea of classes, smells, and money to show how this guy comes to accept that he's just a normal Buddha guy and maybe his life is not gonna change despite this guy behind him who has a title deed. Maybe that'll change. So his conflict. So then there's conflict. So what's the issue? What exactly is sumboing him? We're going to say good guys, the friend's intentions, bad guy getting in his way. We need to think of how the bad guy actually gets into his way directly so that we can kind of tie into this guy and give him a motivation. So also these steps kind of give you exactly what you need to think about. So bad guy versus our good guy. What exactly is making them fight? What exactly is yeah. There will be Half-Life. Wow, I watched that thing Kitambo. Did I finish it? Because I don't even remember that. The most memorable heist where the buggers only stacked everything valuable at the center of a living room. Oh, okay. I don't remember that actually. I don't think I finished that movie. Anyway, so bad guy getting in his way needs to be something that happens. We need to show how they have some form of conflict, and that conflict is why our guy is going through this story. So I need to think of that also. Scrolling down, you have basic action. So up here, I said when a cheap robber's friend shows up, one last heist, he's forced to cross into a new class. So that's going to be my basic action. Cross into a new class. So basic action again, cross into a new class. So what's his weakness? His weakness is that his weakness is what's on the left of what I said. So he's forced to cross into a new class is when our cheap robber shows up for one last heist. So what was his weakness before? Before one last heist happened? What would be his weakness? Is that he really wanted to stand out. Yeah. He really wants to stand out. And does that tie into this? Being a cheap robber has to tie into standing out. So he is a robber too focused on standing out to find his way. So that's added an interesting layer. He's a robber, yes. He wants to stand out. That's what we're talking about with the bikes and the bikes driving off. and he's too focused on standing out in some way. So that's gonna add now. That's adding a few more scenes for me. Generally, just in my head, I'm thinking, we need to start showing how trying to stand out is getting in his way. We need to set up what his old life was like. That's something we need to think about and change. So, what does he change into? He becomes a richer man. He accepts. He gets rich for sure. He gets rich and accepts not to stand out of the crowd. That's really funny, right? How does a guy like that get rich and not stand out of the crowd? That would be pretty crazy. A Boda guy makes like 10 million shillings, 20 million or something, and then he's not going to stand out. That would be. In fact, the question I'm asking right now is exactly the question I think we should be telling in the story. That's actually a story problem, a story challenge. What could possibly. How can this story show how a normal guy getting a whole bunch of money and he still will not try to stand out? And I can already think of one way, which would be looking back at that story of the argument. If our rich guy got an opportunity, if our guy, when he's getting in as one of the caterers, he gets a glimpse of how the bad guy is actually living. So our robber guy is just stealing because he's trying to make money to buy his own house. We can set that up as part of how the story starts. And then when he gets into breaking into this guy's house, he gets a feel for how this life would be like. Like maybe he gets to walk around the guy's house, he sees this guy has all this stuff is really cool. So maybe even that argument with that chick can be something that also helps reinforce to him that maybe having cash and standing out and having a Benz and all that stuff is not actually going to make your life better. Maybe it'll even make you an asshole like this guy. So maybe that experience can also help him realize something. So that's a cool thing to think about. Maybe he'll see, okay, maybe buying a Benz and all this stuff is not cool. Maybe all along in my life I've actually just been okay as a guy just riding a bike. So maybe I just need to buy a fancy bike and tour the world or something. I don't know. That can be like a realization he has, but I think he can still tie well into the work I've done so far. So here we have at the end what brings us to something we call moral choice. It's 2 boxes. We need to give him 2 choices to make. And both of those choices have to be positive. It has to be a choice that whether he picked one or the other, he'd still be better off. It's not like fire or water. Like it's water and it's black water and white water. Like they are both water, but generally speaking, for him himself, the turnout, it's not that one is bad and one is good. So we need to give him a moral choice at some point. And that choice he makes is going to help us reinforce the idea that we're pushing onto our audience, which is that this guy is going to accept who he is, and he's going to not stand out of the crowd anymore. And in fact, you know what? Let's even take that further and say he doesn't get rich. We can keep him as just a kawaida boda guy, but just this whole experience, because of what we've said is that this is about his friend. It's kind of also about his friend getting the title deed. The money shouldn't be we can get away with him not winning the money. It can be they put the cash on them cocotenis, but his friend, after we've done that scene of the Bodas driving off, after the fact, it turns out this guy took the title deed and papered with most of the money. And that's where a smoky cat can come in. We can say our main character had a little conversation with Kokoteni guy and told him, yo, man, I know this guy is going to screw us over. So when you get to the end, put a bit of cash in a smoky cat, and then Badai will come and we clear those tunes, and we pick this mama I met at some house and we go right off into the sunset properly. So that can be something that can be like something I need to think about that can tie into the story, that he doesn't necessarily get rich as such as the bad guy was, because it would be nice to also have him screwed over just a little bit because he's a little guy. So yeah, well, I'll think about it. Maybe he shouldn't get rich. It would be a nice little addition to show that he got a moral lesson out of it. But the thing about moral choice, yeah, it was one or the other, so he needs to choose. At the end of the film of Lord of the Rings, Frodo had a choice of to throw away the ring or to keep it for himself. For him himself, keeping the ring would save him. I mean, he would be powerful and he would become like whatever, to him at least in his mind. And the other choice would be to put the ring away and then to be at peace and to take this life of being at peace. So he could either be powerful or he could be at peace. So that was the moral choice he got. Inception, Cobb got the choice of either going back to America to live with his family or continue to live on the run. He was perfectly capable of living on the run and making more money, and he also had the choice of what might be living in limbo in a dream forever. So for him, those two choices weren't so bad, but he made one choice. Shutter Island, the same thing. He had the choice of being in therapy accepting that he's a fucked up guy and living in therapy for the rest of his life, or on the other hand, accepting, continuing to live in the delusion that he's a detective and all this stuff was just that Lance guy he was talking about. What was his name? I don't know. It was all part of an elaborate plan. So to him, both of those choices were viable, but because of the story happening, he chose this one side, which was to get the lobotomy, and the story ended there. Inception, he chose to do that, and it ended there. So in this story, we need to give my guy two moral choices. It doesn't even have to be part of that Buddha thing. It can tie into it, but at some point in the story, we need to give him two choices. And those two choices have to tie into the design principle, which is the smell and the money and all that. And the other thing about showing how he comes to accept that maybe he doesn't want to be like filthy rich or whatever. So he doesn't want to stand out anymore because he needs to choose that he doesn't want to stand out anymore. So he could probably be given a choice to double cross the guy. So maybe choice one could be double cross friend and continue living with bad guy as his driver or something. And then the other side would be continue going on with friend, win some money, and get away. So for us, we've set up that we know he's going to choose this. We know he's going to choose to continue going on with a friend, and he's going to win some money and get away. But we also need to give a nice choice on the side, like double crossing friend and continue living with bad guy as his driver. We need to, now that it's made us think about that, it's also added an extra scene where we need to now think about how these two are probably going to have a conversation. Maybe bad guy is going to figure out that it's really this guy. So it can also be now, that's why the reason for the bad guy showing up when he's coming to try and stop them. Yeah, I'm back on that scene, I guess. When he's coming to try and stop them, we can make him be shouting that, like, no, we had a deal. Like, we said you'd nini and I'd buy you a plot of land and I'd build you a house. Like, what are you doing, man? Stop, don't go. Or, if you're really there, like, come forward and let's just fix this shit and, give me that title deed and we can drive off into the sunset, you and me. Like, he should be given that option, I guess. And then he's gonna choose, you know what? No. I would rather continue going on with this guy behind me, get my cash, live undercover, and get away. So, now that we have an idea of the option he's not going to take, it becomes, we now have a way to build up that other option as well. When we come back to that house, that scene of him breaking into that guy's house, we can now be thinking about this. Oh, by the way, maybe this is now a good opportunity to, maybe that's putting too many things into one location. But we can also try to start to see how he sees this opportunity to be a driver comes up. Like maybe he bumps into the bad guy and the bad guy is like, hey, you have nice arms. You think maybe you want to be a driver. In fact, now we go back again. This stupid driver of mine, man, say he doesn't even shower. So maybe you'd be a better fit. And he'd be like, you know what, nah. And then, they meet again later and stuff happens and we continue to build up. But yeah, now that we've started to think of the possibility of some choice he can have, it starts to help us to build into the next segment, to build into the story itself. So now the final thing is, okay, so you've thought of all this stuff. We've come up with a premise. We've thought of a bunch of scenes. We've thought of how our characters will change. We've put smoky vans. We've put mkokoteni stuff. We've talked about smell and money and circles crossing together. Ultimately, we need to think about audience appeal. And this is the hardest part of reading this book. It's like a section where he talks about, guys, let's be real. Do you really, really, really believe that this story we're about to tell is interesting? Is it really going to pull in an audience for people to watch? Do you think let's forget about all the fancy shots we can do and things flying and all the heists we can do and how cool it would be for Mkokoteni. Yeah, those scenes would be cool. But generally speaking, as a story, is this a good story? Is this actually going to appeal to someone? Would my mom go to the cinema to watch this? Would my sister watch this? Would my brothers watch this? Would my cousins watch this? My uncles, the ones who actually watch movies, not just a tea for the sake of watching it for me. But if they were gonna go to a cinema to watch a film, would this story I'm trying to build here be interesting enough for them to watch it? And we're doing this now so that we don't start naming characters, we don't start building up stuff, because the same thing we were saying, we don't start getting sentimental value. At this point, I've literally only spent an hour and a half working on this story with you guys. We've worked on this together, I guess. And that's all the time I've spent so far, and 31 cells in an Excel sheet. Just a few words. So before we go any further, we've thought of the opponent. We've thought about where he's going to go. We've built up this house where he's going to do the heist. Is this worth it? Well, what do you guys think? Let's not think of it as, oh, this is Kenya's first animation, or this is Kenya's first big film. Forget about all those novelties and stuff. This story itself, if we gave it to Nolan to do it and film it, do you think it would build a good film? So personally, I'm not totally convinced. I don't think it's interesting enough. I think I'm going to find myself having to make an overly elaborate heist. Like the process they go through, the whole, I'm in, the whole Rick and Morty thing they were making fun of recruiting people, bringing them together, telling them what the plan is. I think I'm going to end up relying a lot on that to make the story interesting, as opposed to building the conflict of this guy trying to understand that he needs to accept he's a Boda guy. So yeah, that's precisely it. As you've said, it has some appeal to it, but it's not there yet. And by taking this step back and thinking about what an audience would think and what you can do, especially at this stage, it becomes way easier to adjust things and make it work. I also know, for one, from this something I said before, you can only tell a story as well as you've experienced. I've never been a Boda guy, so I can't possibly tell a story about that would realistically depict a Boda guy. It would just depict my image of them and what I think they are. So maybe that's something that would reduce the appeal of the story. Maybe just the way I portray them might end up being maybe patronizing or to people who just have a bit more better knowledge of this. I mean, the target audience of this is Kenyans in general, so I think there'll be more people who ride Bodas than don't. So I think I should focus on trying to make sure that sort of segment of the story is more authentic than what I think it is. And I'm thinking of that in the sense of, in order to reach out a better audience. And also for us the same thing. So yeah, audience appeal is the biggest and hardest question to answer. But I think we've answered it ourselves. I think it's going somewhere. It still needs just a little bit more. Not even a little bit. It needs a lot more just to be able to start being not only interesting but also to connect with people. But I mean, so far we've gathered a lot of info. Just like in an hour and a half, we've done a lot of info. We've built up a pretty decent story to happen. So I can just continue living my life basically and looking for more opportunities. How can I make that scene more dramatic when the guy is shouting there? Well, the next time I'm sitting at a bus stop, sorry, not a bus stop, at a traffic light, and we're a bunch of Buddhas, I'll just watch how they behave. Do they actually stop all of them together and wait, and then all of us go? If there was drama happening, would they all actually just still wait for a green light, or would they all just go? Or do I have to kind of think of how all those Buddha guys were in on it? Like, all those little details are sort of the things that are going to start falling apart as I go ahead. And the good thing of thinking about it now is, well, I'm thinking about it now, and at least I've realized I need to write more Buddhas before I tell a Buddha story. But yeah, that's the general idea here on that one. That's just exercise one. That's just chapter one of this book. Like, it's ridiculous. It goes to, I believe, exercise. It should be 12. Oh, 10. Yeah, there are 10 exercises. So yeah, it gets pretty crazy. There's scene construction, there's symbols, there's dialogue, there's a lot of stuff. So maybe what we've done so far, yeah, there's quite a few chapters. I don't know if you can see that. So yeah, 10 chapters. There's story, space, and time, which is what premise, which is what we've done. 7 key steps of story structure: character, moral argument, story world, symbol web, plot, scene weave, scene construction, and symphonic dialogue, and then the conclusion. So some of the things we've already covered, like when we're saying symbols, the way we're talking about the guys, the crowds, and how this guy can't relate to crowds. I think that's a symbol in itself. So there's a whole chapter, a whole bunch of questions like this that you have to just hear. But one other cool part is this: in the 7 steps chapter, there's a part where he tells you to just go down and just write all the scenes that you want and the stuff you want to see. So far, we've already mentioned quite a number of scenes. We've said him at a stage. Why do I keep saying stage? Traffic stop. And he drives ahead of the crowd. Then we have he blends into what are they called? Caterers, to infiltrate bad guy's house. What other scene? Good guy carrying bad guy on his back as they ride, and he explains about the title deed. We had the conversation, the briefing conversation, where bad guy is going to tell, where his friend is going to tell him that he can't allow bad guy to see him. So we need to have that for sure between friend and good guy. Scene as he's trying to use a computer and love interest shows up. Good guy sees bad guy mistreating love interest. What else? What else? Mkokoteni guy running with the money through a crowd. So we're basically just writing all the stuff we've mentioned and all the stuff maybe if the movie was actually made, like what I'd like to see. The scenes I think would happen in them. Especially based on all the stuff we've covered so far. So we've also said bad guy convincing good guy to double cross friend. Then we need to have the heist recruitment sequence. It'll be like a montage. What else? Mkokoteni guy. What? Mkokoteni guy stashing the money in a smoky truck cut for good guy and love interest to find so they can escape together. Escape? Do they need to escape? We can probably set it up in a way that they don't need to escape. Like he goes back to his biker life. Or maybe he can escape and decide to travel. So, but if we decide he's traveling, we're going to have to add scenes where, and we also need to add that drive in him that he feels that he wants to travel. Okay. So I probably should leave that out. Anyway, so yeah, that's basically the next exercise. You just write down all the scenes you want and then you number them in the order that you think they'll appear. And then you write them in the order you think they'll appear and then sort them in that order. And then try and see if a film is coming together out of it and then start to fill in the gaps in between. It's sort of like how we do with comps, like just with keyframes. I mean, we are setting the keyframes here. So now we need to start filling in the in-betweens and the breakdowns. So yeah, that's generally the idea. Hope you guys had fun. I'd suggest you try this out on some story you have. It's really cool. I'm going to try continue developing this. I'm still on that thing of audience appeal. I'm not really convinced that it's that dope. But it's good to know that it's going somewhere. Because I have, like I said, there's another story here called Doreen. Same thing. I've written out all these premise and all these things. And I started to write out the scenes and all that stuff. So it's just something you do, you leave it, write it down, leave it packed somewhere. When I'm writing a boda, I'll just be like, hey, by the way, smoky guys you can usually find them earlier in the morning than you can usually find a boda. It's almost as though these guys wake up earlier than other people. Maybe I can use that in my story. You never know. So yeah, you just constantly, if you ever see how writers and directors are saying how it took me 10 years to write this story, it took me 15 years to write this story. This is basically what they were doing. It was just a document somewhere, and as time went by, years and years go by, as more things happen in your life, you watch more movies, you learn more things, you just continue chipping in, and eventually you just have something really dope. So yeah, that's the idea. Who knows? This story might change. It might change into taxi guys, because I might find taxis are more effective. It might be bicycle guys in a rural town somewhere. It can really go all sorts of directions. But I also need to remember and to picture it in a way that final moment of Boda's driving away, it's what brought me to this idea. And I feel like if I just continue building on top of that and building on top of that moment, even if I can even remove that moment, by the way, but all the stuff that built from it and that it's building into will still be useful in one way or another. Check out Kill Bill's story. Kill Bill's story was extremely different. Okay, not really extremely. It was fairly different before what it is now. And it's the same thing. As time was going by, they were just getting ideas and making it better. So yeah, I would say that should be it for this session. Hope Bill got his feedback well, and I hope you guys learned something interesting. I guess this. I hope this was more fun than just doing a bouncing ball or screwing around in After Effects. But yeah, I definitely got a nice story out of it, and I think you guys as well have something you can steal and go produce, because I didn't copyright or anything. Okay, but it's public now that I told it to people, so I still have a case. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, they can get profiled, but as long as they don't have the evidence, they should be safe. Yeah. They can be stopped somewhere and there's no evidence. Yeah. Did this thing stop? No. Oof. This cold weather is messing my chest. Oh yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I saw there's a dedicated page on IMDb about some details about the movie. There's some cool stuff there too. It's 9. What am I gonna do tomorrow? Alright, anyway, yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks so much for coming again. If you're watching this after the fact, thanks for watching and making it this far. As usual, we'll be doing this every week, so holla once again next week and we will cover something else. We'll continue on animation stuff. I got a request to do some motion graphic stuff in After Effects. I still have some ball animation and 12 principles to cover, so there's still at least 3 streams left. So yeah, stay tuned, and once again, thanks for coming through. Sasa. Cheers, guys. Oh my god, my chest. Yeah.